Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle Me in my series Freemasonry and Satanism. I still think about that name and how apropos it was. I was deciding for days what to call this series back in September 2013. Where I had been reading books for almost 10 years, and I had experimented and put effort to talk to people about things I had discovered. And I realized it was a bigger can of worms than I could deal with. It's just too vast of a subject. You can't do it. There's so many pieces to this puzzle. So I decided to start making videos. A lot of people wrote books. But interestingly enough, as popular as those books were for the past 100 years or more, it seems we, the people, the citizens on planet Earth, have very short memories. So books that were popular when our grandparents were alive, the people today have no idea about those books. So upon my epiphany and considering that and trying to talk to people and giving myself a headache trying to explain the whole thing about the New Age and the New World Order and so much more, and admittedly, even after reading books, reading magazines, reading press releases, typing in comments and debating with people year after year, and alternate websites and watching thousands of videos, I know even more now than I knew back then in 2013. It's just too much. So the easy way out for me was to make videos. So people could choose to watch the videos, and there's a list on my website, rickmiracle.com, and they could have a shortcut because I just kept dumping the material out there that I discovered that was a lot of work. Many hours every day, every week, every month, every year. Paying attention to current events, getting more books, getting more magazines, watching more videos, reading, thinking. So anyways, I started making these videos, and then of course I had to come up with a name, and Freemasonry and Satanism seemed to tie in the material world with the invisible reality. There goes my phone again. Got to take care of business, pay the bills. So anyways, I mentioned in previous recent videos, I've ordered some more books, and they have come in. And I made a recent video series 139 on the pole shift, which, by the way, if you go look on the internet, the current news, August 1st, 2017, about Nibiru Planet X. Just look it up. You're not going to believe it. Yet again, the threat of the end of the world is overwhelming. And so I decided, I found this accidentally at a friend's house. You could read it on her bookshelf. And I said, can I borrow that book? This is too much of a coincidence. And it's dated 1980 published. So I did make a video. Go watch the video. But anyways, in this book, it mentioned the Secret Doctrine, the Theosophical Society. So there's a lot of information. I've been making videos on the Theosophical Society, series number 84. This is volume 1. But when the Pole Shift book referenced this book, little did I know there were more books like this. This is volume 1. It's almost like a small encyclopedia set. And this book referenced volume 2. It's important here because this is Cosmogenesis. Let's see if it has it in here. Cosmogenesis, right above my finger here. So the genesis of the cosmos, creation by some entity, some creator, something they call the Logos. And this is part of the Hermetic teachings, mysticism, the Kabbalah, magic, witchcraft, if you will. And I use the word witchcraft in a derogatory term only because, and a lot of people say, well, it's all not evil, Rick. Only because they want to keep it secret from the rest of us. So whatever they know, they don't want us to know. They even call us profane. And apparently, like the Zionist, Kabbalist, Zoharist, Talmudist, certain Jewish people who want to be the aristocrats of the world and practice some kind of demonology where they even sacrifice humans and drink blood and eat flesh and so much more in their rituals. And apparently these are part of the same people who are the Illuminati, and people have come forward and confessed about sacrificing people. Apparently even shape-shifting beings who turn into some reptilian beast. And in the channeled material, it seems they're related to the Anunnaki and this planet X, Nibiru, and reptilians admitted in channeled material that I've gone over recently in videos. Boggles the mind. So, Cosmogenesis. Pole Shift mentioned Volume 2, Anthropogenesis. So I got, this is all connecting the dots here, so bear with me. I just got it in the mail. Kind of dark. Looks like it's been on some bookshelf and worn out for a while. You can go on used book sites and usually find stuff like this. So you have Anthropogenesis. So I've been reading about it. And remember, I discovered that book because I'm reading about Pole Shift, published in 1980, and all over the YouTube videos right now. America, the world, Earth, is supposed to be colliding with Planet X or a flyby in a huge pole shift less than 60 days from now. Where is this coming from? Oh my. Anthropogenesis. So instead of cosmogenesis, the creation of the cosmos, it's the creation on planet Earth of creatures, beings, humans, races. So I'll be reading from this book, tying in with this material that ties in with the supposed incoming Planet X. And also I've been reading and watching videos. I got another book in the mail. We'll be making another video right away. Series number 143. I've already selected the series number because I'm moving right ahead forward here. Zeta Talk, Nancy Leader. I've been watching videos, taking notes, and Nancy Leader says Nibiru has been spotted. It's on its way. Warnings from the Zeta. Warnings from the Palladians and all these other channelers who are channeling beings like Cryon from Lee Carroll, who even speaks to the United Nations. And the United Nations is listening to channelers channeling these entities from the invisible reality. Who are they? Should we rely on that information from these invisible beings? Angels or demons? Watchers, archons, Nephilim, fallen angels? Here's the question. Who's the truthers or who's deceiving us? So I was doing a little homework. I got a couple other things in the mail because I was researching this stuff about the Theosophical Society mentioned in this book. So I started really looking into Helena Blavatsky's The Secret Doctrine, which apparently is just another revision of ISIS Unveiled. I have the book over there. But I did get a 1938 magazine, the Theosophist magazine, here in the mail. I've been reading it, finding some very interesting information. The Theosophist magazine was originally called Lucifer magazine. So many people will deny that Lucifer is a bad guy. And also I recently did series number 140 on the Rosicrucian philosophy, questions and answers. I'm just trying to really get a good handle on these philosophies. Freemasons, moral and dogma, Albert Pike, who predicted World War I, World War II, World War III, and who would fight them. Helena Blavatsky, Theosophical Society, Encyclopedia Judaica, the Kabbalah, and the Zionist and the Communist, the Illuminati, many books I've done on that, Freemasons, and then the Rosicrucians. I just want to understand the philosophies they're teaching, so when I listen to the channeled material by all those books, Jane Roberts channeling Seth, Esther Hicks channeling Abraham, Barbara Marciniak channeling the Palladians, and so much more, kind of off the beaten path topics. I've been making videos on books, and even recently Crossing the Rubicon, Michael Rupert, and so many other books I have on all these sinister, malevolent forces controlling our planet, trying to bring us some kind of globalization. Just imagine that, controlling the whole world with a bunch of robot cops. Stuff right out of movies. So another magazine I got in the mail, I haven't even opened the package yet. They sent these packages in some pretty interesting little papers. The Theosophist book, Theosophist magazine, from 1938. So they send it in these little papers because apparently they're valuable and they could be destroyed. But I got another magazine which ought to be interesting, and I'll be making more videos on the Rosicrucian philosophy. This is the Rosicrucian magazine. Comes in a nice little wrapper. So my point is, you can go online and find these things if you're so inclined. You want to find out what the heck is going on. So anyways, just a little snippet here about the Theosophical Society before I read from Anthropogenesis regarding Earth's previous calamities. Gotta spit the words out. You know, pole shifts, races destroyed, the Great Flood, and discussed in the Theosophical Society. What's it say? We'll get to that in a moment. So I'm trying to connect the dots because we even have the channelers and Nancy Leader. Look at the gray alien talking to the Zetas. There's a Zeta telling us about an incoming planet X. The whole Earth is going to shift on its pole. continents are going to be destroyed. Aleister Crowley brings us the law of one. Do as thou wilt. I said that right. And he describes Lamb and Iowas. He drew pictures of them. They look like these little aliens. So if the guy is going to write the most sinister book, The Devil's Commandments, and the alien looks like this, Nazi leaders communicating with these Zetas or reptilians. And in other material, Bringers of the Dawn talks about some kind of Palladians and the things where they interfered with our history, and they have returned to try to correct those mistakes they made and make amends for their own sake, to save themselves. Then, of course, I was looking at the Urantia material. Uranta, the Bestowal of Michael, Series 137. I made a video on that, which had some interesting comments about Lucifer and beings. So before I read from the Secret Doctrine and the Anthropogenesis, I just started doing a little poking around because I did get the Theosophical magazine, and I went to look it up for some more information, and I found out that they had a little beef with people. One of the most slanderous, ignorant, and utterly false accusation that has been repeatedly directed at Helena Blavatsky against the Theosophists in general over the years is the claim that Theosophy is a form of Satanism and that Madame Blavatsky was a devil worshipper. So here we go. So here, clearly, let me show you a picture here. Clearly in this book, my Series 123, on the bottom of the book, Aleister Crowley changed his name so the spelling would equal 666. I've studied a lot here. I know a little bit. And I made a video, so please go watch it. It's definitely evil material. And when I made this video, I showed the pages and paused so you could read it, because I would not personally announce these words and incantations myself for bringing evil to myself. I'm that convinced. And it says it in the book. There's a warning. So some people don't want to believe. So anyways, Aleister Crowley's Lamb and Little Gray Men, you can look this up on the internet. So the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which was a spin-off of the Rosicrucians, part of the Freemasons associations. So I'm just looking here for this picture, but they do have Wikipedia about the being that Aleister Crowley was communicating with, Iowas. All this is in my video. And of course they have these beings. We've all seen pictures and statues, like the one of Baal. They want to put in. They wanted to put up in a state building in Oklahoma. Wound up putting it up in Detroit. A statue of Baal, devil. And Aleister Crowley drew pictures of his Lamb and Iowas. Clearly, little gray alien types, and there's much more here. It ties into the beings tie into the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. Kinds of beasts are these? So my point is, the common denominators keep showing up. And when I read about the Theosophical Society, and the reason I mention this before I read from the book, I just think people ought to have a little more idea of what we're talking about. So back to this little document I found on the internet. So they were accusing a lot of people because Helena Blavatsky created the Lucifer magazine, later on called the Theosophist magazine. And then the Lucifer Publishing Company, you can look it up on Wikipedia, was changed to Lucas Publishing Company. And a lot of the New Age books, I have a few of them. If you look on the cover where it's published, on the inside it says Lucas Publishing Company. So all of this, a lot of this New Age is coming from the Theosophists, which appears to be Luciferic. And here they're defending it in this document. So I just thought I would show you the connections with those pictures. Those accusations and condemnations originate primarily from the realm of Christianity. So there's so much obvious untruths here. I'm going to show that right away. So they're saying originate primary from the realm of Christianity. And you know what the New Age, the New World Order, the Freemasons, etc., there are all these secret societies and cults, the Zionists, the Illuminati, they are the enemies of Christianity. The enemies of the Messiah who came 2,000 years ago, Jesus, to give us a message that we are to love one another, not kill each other. But so many people don't want to go with that message. For the life of me, I guess greed and perversion dominates God's commandments. And from those of its adherents who believe in a personable anthropomorphic God and a personal anthropomorphic devil, so I guess that's some human type of God or devil, the supposed enemy of that God. Considering the fact that Lucifer and Satan have come to be viewed as synonymous terms and names for the same entity, it is not too hard to see why our Christian friends have jumped to such a conclusion, and seeing as the Theosophist magazine started in England in the late 1880s by Helena Blavatsky and was titled Lucifer, and that her masterpiece work, The Secret Doctrine, which we're going to read from today, series 142, before it's all over, I'll have half a dozen series made out of that book or more. That's why I gave it its own series number, because it's a big thick book like a Bible, and different than series number 84, which was The Secret Doctrine, Cosmogenesis. So there's the beef here about people and her Lucifer magazine, people accusing her of Satanism, and that her masterpiece work, The Secret Doctrine, she speaks of Lucifer in positive and glowing terms. So I did go over the Rosicrucian book, series number 140 recently, and clearly in their explanation of the Garden of Eden, we all know about the Bible. Well, most people know. But a lot of people don't know anything about anything these days. That's why I make these videos. But the Bible has the story that God created Adam and Eve, and a serpent came into the garden and tempted them to do something that God told them not to do. Do not eat of the tree of knowledge, the apple tree. But they listened to the serpent, who said, you shall surely not die. God just doesn't want you to know. So they did eat of it, and they wound up, according to my understanding of the biblical story, of being enlightened with knowledge. And also the fact that they were standing there naked with one another, And they blushed and went and grabbed some leaves to kind of cover up, make a leaf skirt or whatever, and hiding in the bushes when apparently later on God was strolling through the garden, calling out, Adam, Eve, where are you? And they said, we're over here in the bushes. And he goes, why are you in the bushes? Because we're naked. And he goes, who told you were naked? Did you eat of the tree of knowledge? So we know the story. They were kicked out of the garden. Some cherubim were put in front of the gate of the garden to keep them out from eating of the other tree, the tree of life. This is the Genesis story in the Bible. Okay, the Rosicrucian story is slightly different. And I read from the Rosicrucian Philosophy Questions and Answer book. Go watch my video if you haven't seen it, Series 140, Part 1. But the story there has changed, that God initially, after he created Earth, he put Sataniel on Earth, which was of his own seed. So he was divine, plus made of the dirt of the earth, made into a human. So he was a divine human, Sataniel, later called Satan, also called Lucifer. And to keep Sataniel on this earth he made, and putting Sataniel on earth in the form of a human being, but also with divine powers and divine DNA, he created Eve, who was from the earth, the clay, and the water, who was totally human, not of God's divine essence. So this Sataniel being divine mated with Eve, who was human, and had an offspring called Cain. This is in the Rosicrucian material, not me. I'm just reporting what I learned, and I'm sharing, and I'm not advocating it as truth. So anyways, Sataniel quickly became bored with the earth and wanted to go back into the divine realm, heaven, wherever that is, and abandoned Eve and his son Cain. So they call her the widower's son, but wait a minute. When a man abandons his wife and child, it's not called a widower. But anyways, God had sympathy, compassion for Eve, so he created Adam. This is in the Rosicrucian material again. I was stunned when I read this story. And so Adam was made out of the earth, clay, and water, so he was human. And Eve was human, of the earth. And they had a son called Abel. And the son whose father abandoned him, Cain, was jealous and slew Abel, which is the biblical story. And then Adam and Eve had a second son, Seth. So apparently a lot of people on earth today are from the lineage of Cain, half human, half divine. And the rest of us are from the lineage of Adam and Eve, human and human, according to the Rosicrucian material. I'm just saying there's all this evidence. And in this stuff, this material on Helena Blavatsky, it says people have it all wrong to be saying that Lucifer was the bad guy. The Secret Doctrine, she speaks of Lucifer in positive and glowing terms. So my point to all this opening is when I read from the Secret Doctrine, keep in the back of your mind there's this other distortion of reality. And of course, we the people want to figure out what's the truth. And so the Rosicrucian gives us the Sataniel story about Cain. And also, strangely enough, another video I made recently, series number 137, on the Uranta book, which is very popular. Go look it up. This was some doctor in 1933, I think. Was called on a medical case where a woman called up and said her husband fell asleep and would not awaken. And this particular doctor was a skeptic and had a good reputation for exposing fraud in the psychic realm. There was a lot of psychic research and meditations, talking to dead people going on back then. I guess you charge a lot of money, you can make a lot of money. There was a lot of fraud, so they say. This particular doctor in my series 137 on the Urantia book, go look it up on the internet, it's free in PDF. Anyways, it's an amazing story, but what struck me here was a little discussion, if you go watch my video, it's in there, about Lucifer. So apparently Michael, known later as a manifested human, Jesus, as the creator of this universe called Abaddon, had to come to Earth, also known as Urantia, and it was his 7th excursion or duty to, over the years, to travel to one of the planets of his creation and to be one of the creatures that he created. So his 7th and last time was coming here to Earth, and by the name of Jesus. And then while he was here, I'm just going to read this. This is Urantia book, part 4, paper 120. Under the bestowal limitations, go watch my video or read it for yourself. You can look it up. Part 4, paper 120. It's free online. The bestowal of Michael on Urantia. So that would be Jesus on Earth, according to the Urantia book. I would regard it as a fitting climax of your mortal bestowal if you should return us as the Son of Man, planetary prince of Urantia, as well as the Son of God, supreme sovereign of your universe, as a mortal man, the lowest type of intelligent creature in Abaddon, meet and adjudicate the blasphemous pretensions of Caligestia and Lucifer, and in your assumed humble estate forever end the shameful misrepresentations of these fallen children of light, Lucifer. Having steadfastly declined to discredit these rebels through the exercise of your creator prerogatives, now it would be fitting that you should, in the likeness of the lowest creature of your creation, wrest dominion from the hands of these fallen sons, so to which your whole local universe in all fairness clearly and forever recognize the justice of your doing in the role of mortal flesh these things which mercy admonishes you not to do by the power of arbitrary authority. So we're talking about channel material. And it says to rid the planet Earth of the misrepresentations of these fallen children of light, and the adjudicate the blasphemous children of light, to rid our reality of Lucifer and this other being called Caligestia. So in the channel material, the Urantia book, that's what it says about these Lucifer beings, fallen angels. And in this material on the Lucifer the Light Bearer, about Helena Blavatsky, defends Lucifer as actually being a good guy. And when I did read this stuff from the Urantia book that I just read, and if you remember these words, the children of light, and it goes on and uses these words, uses these exact words, the bringer of the dawn, in this material, that Barbara Marciniak channels the Palladians, calls the beings the bringers of the dawn. Barbara Marciniak, the Palladians. So the Palladians appear to be the Lucifer beings and fallen angels. And it says it here on this material about Lucifer the Light Bearer. I realize this is complicated, bear with me. But it clearly says, as is highlighted by my finger, the bringers of the dawn. Lucifer literally means light bearer, bringer of the dawn, shining one, morning star. So we got channeled material also saying they're representing the bringers of the dawn, known as the teachings from the Pleiadians. So are the fallen angels the ones communicating information to us, to Helena Blavatsky, to what about the other channelers that so many people love and would give me a thumbs down on my video for mentioning this stuff? They are so attracted to it. And I'm not trying to disparage anybody and make accusations. I'm just saying, is it possible that these other people channeling information telling us that a pole shift is coming? What happened to my other book? Telling us a pole shift is coming. Nancy Leader. Barbara Marciniak, go watch her videos. There, she's warning about a pole shift. So a lot of these channelers are warning us about the end of the world, and it looks like we're getting the warning from some fallen angels. Wow. So let me read from this book now that we've examined a little bit more background, because remember, Helena Blavatsky of the Theosophical Society originally created the Lucifer magazine. She was also in communication with some masters, beings from the other side. Fallen angels, maybe? So what can we believe about the Secret Doctrine? And it is the foundation and basis for the New Age. And a lot of people believe. We have a problem. What's the truth? So I have been looking up certain words. I obviously can only read a couple snippets from this book to finish my 2-hour video. But it may be enough, and I usually mark the pages I made a video on. So when I want to pick up the book again and peruse some more information and create another video with some valuable information, I know where I am and I can go through this book numerous times and probably not even put a dent in it. So if you want to go on the internet and use book sites or wherever and try to find these books, volume 1 or volume 2, you might find it interesting and make up your own mind about reality. Okay, here we go. So there's supposed to be records out there in all the nations all over the world, ancient records, about the previous destructions on planet Earth and other races, other cataclysmic events, other pole shifts, other descriptions of what was then land on the equator was instantly transferred to the North Pole or whatever. So I thought I'd read some of this material, knowing a lot of it appears to be channeled material and resourced by ancient records. What's the truth? And why do we have this threat of a pole shift or planetary pass-by changing the pole or causing, apparently, according to some YouTube videos, the Earth will stop rotating for a full week. And it's quite a bombardment of propaganda or videos out there of this warning. So I wonder how it affects people. Now, how could these records have been preserved? We may be asked. Page 332. Even the knowledge of the zodiac is denied to the Hindus by our kind and learned Orientalists who conclude that the Aryan Hindus knew nothing of it before the Greeks brought it into the country. So the zodiac, apparently, the constellations, it's like a big clock. Tells time about things happening on Earth, like the Mayan calendar. All right, so this uncalled for slander was so sufficiently refuted by Bailey, and what is more, by the clear evidence of facts, as not only to need very much additional refutation. While the Egyptians have on their zodiacs, see Denon's Voyage in Egypt, Volume 2, some book, D-E-N-O-N-S, apostrophe, irrefutable proofs of records having embraced more than 3.5 sidereal years. So apparently a sidereal year is one complete cycle of the astrological chart, about 26,000 years. So 3.5 sidereal years would be 87,000 years. Apparently they have some kind of records available. The Hindu calculations cover nearly 33 such years, or 850,000 years. The Egyptian priest assured Herodotus that the pole of the earth and the pole of the ecliptic had formerly coincided. So the pole of the earth and the pole of the ecliptic had formerly coincided. Would you call that a pole shift? Apparently what happens is there's attraction for whatever reason, just like you take two magnets together and they either attract or they push apart. There's some force that pulls on the earth, but it can't pull the entire earth. So apparently the skin on the surface of the earth can slide if it breaks loose. Just like if you ever see that Velcro, and you stick it together and it holds up a lamp or a mirror or something, whatever, Velcro. And if you pull it hard enough, it snaps. Well, apparently the Earth's skin has a similar Velcro effect to the ball underneath the planet. And when the slippage occurs, the grip on the Earth, the skin of the Earth, the crust, will slide 45, 50, 90 degrees. And apparently it's happened many times, according to the material I'm about to read right now, that I am reading. So it says here, the pole of the earth and the pole of the ecliptic had formerly coincided. And remember, this is Helena Blavatsky's book, The Secret Doctrine, published in, written in 1888, excuse me. 1888. It wasn't 1900 yet. So 88, that'd be 12, 100 years, 112, add 17, 132, 140 years ago. This material was out there about this ancient history of the earth. If you can believe this. Now, I believe that there have been catastrophic events on the planet. I live in the mountains of North Carolina. I visited the mountains of the Rocky Mountains. And certainly there seems to be a situation where parts of the earth pull apart, stretch, and then the other parts that change position get scrunched together, because remember, the earth is supposed to be like an egg shape, not completely round. So if the skin did slide 45, 50, 60, 90 degrees, some of it would be stretched in certain portions, and other places it would all be pushed up against each other, and some of it would slide up and over, and that's what mountains look like today. And we all know about the flood, Noah's flood, as we learn in Christianity. But the ancient tribes all over the planet have histories and stories of the flood also. And apparently, according to this material, there are many stories throughout history of many cataclysmic events. So could something happen? Did something happen? I'm going to say absolutely yes. I also know that some people, evil forces, could be manipulating this information to create this new age and new world order. The big question is, what is the truth here? Why are they building underground tunnels and biological weapons and plan on depopulating the planet in a Hunger Games movie type of reality? They've been training psychics and remote viewers, and they're learning things they don't share with the rest of us. So I make these videos and share what I learn so the rest of us can have some fundamental information, some basics to think from. And maybe we should demand answers from our leaders on this planet, knowing full well that they are completely ripping us off and not representing us at all. And I've got books. I just went over that with Crossing the Rubicon with Michael Rupert, and I've been reading the last couple days again the Confessions of an Economic Hitman, and I'll be making another video on the Nancy Leader book I just got to further show that the videos I've been watching recently, yesterday, that there's all kinds of fear promoted on the internet right now, that September 23rd, 2017 is the day. And of course they've been doing that in recent years, 2012, 2000, and many times in between, different comments, different instances, making movies. All right, so let's go back to what it's saying here about this pole shift in the past. But as remarked by the author of the Sphinx, these poor benighted Hindus have registered a knowledge of astronomy for 10 times 25,000 years since the local flood in Asia and the age of Hara in the latitude of India. So apparently there are ancient stories about cataclysmic events, a pole shift, earthquakes, and destruction. And they possess recorded observations from the date of the Great Flood within the Aryan historical memory, that which submerged the last portions of Atlantis 850 years ago. So we all know about Atlantis. A lot of people know about Lemuria. A lot of people know about Hyperborea. Different races of entities, humans or whatever on this planet. The floods are which preceded are, of course, more traditional than historical. The sinking and transformation of Lemuria, beginning nearly at the Arctic Circle, Norway, the third root race ended its career in Lanka, or rather that which became Lanka with the Atlanteans. So apparently we people now are in the fifth root race, and Lemuria would have been the third root race. Atlantis would have been the fourth root race, and apparently the first and second root race, according to this material, which I will get to, weren't wholly flesh and blood material creatures like we humans of today. They were more spiritual beings, less dense, and had other kinds of powers. So apparently it's all been growing. Each race supersedes the other ones towards perfection. Evolution of human race, evolution of spiritual entities which now occupy the biological human body. I'm going to spit the words out. Just some thinking here, that's all. Just some thinking. What about all those YouTube videos right now that says the end is coming September 23rd, 2017. Less than 60 days. and the United Nations listening to Lee Carroll channeling Cryon. All these channeled entities through channelers are predicting this, a lot of them, and preaching that we are gods. And even David Wilcock, Corey Good, all this stuff about ascension. This metaphysical information, I think, for most of us is new material. And to get a handle on it, for it to be common sense material, where did it come from? It's probably an important thing to know that. The small remnant, now known as Cylons, in the northern highland of ancient Lanka, while the enormous island of that name was in the Lemuria period, a gigantic continent described a few pages back. As a master says, see Esoteric Buddhism, why should not your geologists bear in mind that under the continents explored and fathomed by them, there may be hidden deep or fathomless, or rather unfathomed ocean beds or other or far older continents whose strata have never been geologically explored, and that they may someday upset entirely their present theories. So there has been rumored or archaeological discoveries of seemingly human-made remnants of civilizations under the ocean. Did some continents sink, and did other lands rise during the hundreds of thousands, millions of years in the past? Why not admit that our present continents have, like Lemuria and Atlantis, been several times already submerged and had the time to reappear again and bear the new groups of mankind and civilization, and that at the first great geological upheaval, at the next cataclysm, in the series of periodic cataclysms that occur from the beginning to the end of every round, our already autopossessed continents will go down, and the Lemurias and the Atlantis continents come up again. But here is an explanation is needed. No confusion and need arise as regard the postulation of northern Lemuria. The prolongation of the great continent into the North Atlantic Ocean is in no way subversive of the opinions so widely held as to the site of the lost Atlantis, and one collaborates the other. So if you do your homework, it appears that there was a Lemuria, then an Atlantis, and now we have the continents we have today. It must be noted that Lemuria, which served as the cradle of the third root base, not only embraced a vast area in the Pacific and Indian Oceans, but extended in the shape of a horseshoe past Madagascar, round South Africa, and then a mere fragment in process of formation up through the Atlantic to Norway. Wow. So a big horseshoe-shaped continent, which is almost the opposite of what we have now, with Africa, Europe, Asia connecting through Russia and Alaska, and it could be considered in America and North America a big horseshoe shaped. So at one other time was it in some other configuration, and did some lands sink and some arise? Again, this is material published in 1888 from the Theosophical Society, who in accusations that they called their magazine Lucifer and publishing company Lucifer, that they had some satanic connections. And that apparently a lot of these entities are talking through channelers, and a lot of people are loving the information they're being told. A lot of people are going with the New Age and the New World Order. and will even form protests and marches trying to say don't build that wall between the USA and Mexico, the Women's March, and stuff like that, not knowing what they're fighting. Meanwhile, we watch 9/11 knowing that World War I, World War II were intentionally created, as described by Albert Pike, the leader of the Freemasons during the Civil War. World War I, World War II, and World War III were necessary. So I continue to say that what's going on in this physical reality has something to do with some entities in the spiritual reality. And maybe somebody's bringing some kind of cosmic war here to Earth. And what can we believe? And will they bring us some kind of alien invasion, Project Bluebeam, or use these scares of a pole shift? And they've got technologies and weapons. They could fake it. But they are bent on this new age and new world order. And they have to set the stage for this grand show. The great English freshwater deposit called the Weedon, which every geologist regards as the mouth of the former great river, is the bed of the main stream which drained northern Lemuria in the secondary age. The former reality of this river is a fact of science. With its volataries acknowledged the necessity of accepting the secondary age of northern Lemuria, which their data demands. Professor Birdham Seaman not only accepted the reality of such a mighty continent, but regarded Australia and Europe as formerly portions of one continent. So Australia and Europe was one continent. So apparently, it's going to be as bizarre as it sounds. But the whole thing were these ring of fire, these continental divides we have now with their volcanoes. The continents actually slide against each other quite a bit. So apparently something like Brazil will be near one of the icy poles, and Alaska will be down up near the equator. They've got maps. You can go on Nancy Lieder's website and other channeled materials and see some of these descriptions of what's going to happen. And apparently Edgar Casey describes a pole shift. So I just thought it would be very interesting to get into the background of these philosophies, these stories. What's true? And what should we do? According to Nancy Lieder, get away from the lowlands and the coast. And on her website, zetatalk.com, they have whole maps and everything. And there's all this to make people move. And then, of course, we have the threat of global warming, the oceans rising, terror threats, threats of nuclear World War III, the USA-Georgia Guidestones say they want to depopulate the planet to 500 million and maintain it at that level. And all these satanic rituals and Super Bowl halftime shows and Emmys, Grammys, Super Bowl openings, tunnel openings, the Bohemian Grove ceremonies in California, stuff I mentioned over and over and over. Shootings, bombings, all suspicious like false flags. Somebody's trying to change something. And they're building facilities underground for these elites to save themselves whenever what happens, happens. But fortunately for those of us who are God-believing humans, we know we're spiritual beings in these biological bodies. And they can only kill us. They cannot steal our souls. And we lose our souls only by our free choice, which is why they're using propaganda to get everybody to voluntarily deny God and ask to be saved or change the way the planet is going. Just saying. And some of this material in this book here that I'm reading right now, and I'll get to it, says that some of this destruction on planet Earth is the result of human karma. I keep wondering why they want everybody to be perverted and decadent and greedy and selfish. And destruction comes when karma goes completely negative. Is that possible? And could they know that and intentionally want everybody to deny God and the Ten Commandments and not love one another, so that the whole thing will be destroyed? Do these watchers and entities really hate we humankind that much? It seems so. I'm stretching it, but let me read on. You decide. Okay. So Australia and Europe as formerly portions of one continent, page 333. Volume 2 of the Secret Doctrine on Anthropogenesis, thus collaborating the whole horseshoe doctrine already enunciated. No more striking confirmation of our position could be given than the fact that the elevated ridge in the Atlantic basin 9,000 feet in height. So in the Atlantic Ocean, there is a ridge in the middle of it between Africa and Europe and the United States and South America, Central America. A long ridge, 9,000 feet high. So if the Earth's skin was moved 30, 40 degrees, was that ridge higher, and wherever it settled, did it drop? Which runs for some 2,000 or 3,000 miles southward from a point near the British Islands, first slopes towards South America, and then shifts almost at right angles to proceed the southeasterly line towards the African coast, whence it runs on southward towards Tristan de Cunha, wherever that is. This ridge is a remnant of the Atlantic continent and could be traced further, would establish the reality of a submarine horseshoe junction, which a former continent in the Indian Ocean. So they're saying there's evidence that this other horseshoe continent did exist. All right, chart adopted from the Challenger and Dolphin soundings by Mr. Donnelly, Atlantis in the Antediluvian World, page 47. I'm looking at my bookcase to the right here, and I've got a dozen books on Atlantis. So maybe we'll look at those at some point in my investigation. I've read several of them, and it has astonishing material. And we all know that there are similar periods in the Yucatan Peninsula, like there is in Egypt and all over the world, and similar peoples and even geological mountain ranges or land masses match those across the world on the coastline of, say, Africa. So apparently there was a splitting apart, and some of these pieces can be put together. So there was a stretching, and then there was a putting together. Pieces like this would cause them to crunch up like mountains, which they did, or go up like this, which they did. I'm not going to deny that that didn't happen. I think it's obvious to anybody who looks at a mountain that the shale is not sedimentary like this with gravity. It's actually forced up and fallen over in many places. And the Rockies, which are newer mountains, it's fairly obvious that whatever caused that was fairly recent in geological times. There wasn't enough trees and growth there to have enough soil to erase the visual observation. Like there is here in the Appalachians, there's so much dirt, we can't see all the tumbled rocks underneath like you can in the Rockies. Not enough time has gone by for enough dirt to be created or moved there, and trees to grow, and grass and everything else. So how new are they? Was it 3,000, 10,000, 20,000, which would be relatively recent in geological terms? Okay, so some of this makes sense here, but again, I'm questioning if this book was 1988, and the one on the pole shift I just showed you was 1980, and the other one was 1888, 140 years ago, almost 40 years ago on the pole shift book. That I made a video on. Go watch this stuff. So I'm just tracking down all these clues here, trying to wrap my head around a rational explanation for everything. Moving on, this ridge is a remnant of the Atlantic continent, and could it be traced further would establish the reality of a submarine horseshoe junction with a former continent in the Indian Ocean. The Atlantic portion of Lemuria was a geological basis of what is generally known as Atlantis. The latter, indeed, must be regarded rather as the development of the Atlantic prolongation of Lemuria than as an entirely new mass of land upheaval to meet the special requirements of the fourth root race. So each one of these changes in the Earth's crust probably had some kind of cosmic, spiritual, divine cause or intervention, special requirement for the fourth root race. So whoever created mankind had to take into account the DNA of the current climate and situation on planet Earth. And also, if reincarnation is true, and we are evolving spiritual beings, and the first root race, we were more fundamental, basic souls, and not material like this dense skin or anything. It was more of a twilight zone reality, like heaven maybe, but more dense. And each root race changed. Second root race, third root race Lemuria, fourth root race Atlantis, and the fifth root race now. So what they're prophesizing, or what the channeled entities are saying, is the fifth root race will be destroyed, and the next super race of beings on Earth will be the sixth root race. And this is part of the ascension and all this other stuff, transformation, transfiguration. And here we talk about homosexuality, pansexuality, and transgenderism, new kinds of human beings. Hitler was into eugenics, and there's plenty of books that even in America they were into eugenics. So all this appears to be part of the new age and the new world order. I realize that was a lot to say. I appreciate people watching my video bearing with me. It can be difficult for me to put all this into clear spoken words so that anybody can understand the story. And that's my aim. And I spend a lot of time reading this stuff, getting these books, spending my money, and connecting the dots, even with Aleister Crowley and his lamb and Iowas looking like gray aliens, and creating a Bible that's totally sinister and evil. Do as thou wilt. There's no such thing as sin. And then, of course, Nancy Leader communicating with these Zetas, and don't they look like Aleister Crowley's beings? And the beings described by Barney and Betty in their abduction story. And these beings are described in many of the UFO alien books, even descriptions of the creatures discovered in the Roswell accident. Does it have to be plainer? And then, of course, Zachariah Stitchin's Anunnaki, and the channelers say the Anunnaki are the reptilians, and the reptilians are the Illuminati. So we know what Satanism and Luciferianism is. It's also the Anunnaki, also the Illuminati, also the Zionists, the Communists, the banksters, the elites, the kings and queens who have been dominating and treating the rest of we the people like animals and slaves. Just saying. And I've got some of these books, like Michael Rupert, Crossing the Rubicon, I'm going to go over, Confessions of an Economic Hitman. And they are deceiving us. They brought us World War I. They brought us World War II. They brought us 9/11. They brought us so much more. They took over the USA money supply in 1913. They crashed the system 8 times. They took away everything from we the people, causing us a lot of pain and suffering, stealing our wealth, our earnings from our hard work for generations of families all over the world. Anyways, that's where it's at. And that's where I'm at in my investigation. I wouldn't have known any of this stuff when I started making videos. I knew a little bit and I started sharing. But to this point, Nancy Leader, Aleister Crowley, Barbara Marciniak, Esther Hicks, Jane Roberts channeling Seth, all these organizations acting behind the scenes, generation after generation, they get in positions as senators and representatives and presidents. They assassinate presidents of Costa Rica, Panama, overthrow shahs in Iran, and then they got plans after 9/11 for some really sinister activities with this new age and new world order. And they're dumping chemicals in our sky. Causes me to have my asthma kick in when they don't spray like the last few days. I've been breathing a lot better, and I look up into my girlfriend, I go, look, they're not spraying. I'm not gasping for air. It's pretty obvious there's a connection. And all these books I've been making, you can find a list of them on my website, rickmiracle.com. 150 books or more, and you can read them in the order you want, and there's part 1s or part 12s or part 7s. It tells you how many. I got little X's there. And I'm going to go back to the beginning and scan those books again and make a part 2 or a part 3, depending where I'm at. But I have to go with my intuition and just move along as I feel what is necessary. Just like this particular series seems to be very important at this time, with all the propaganda, videos, YouTube, threats, channelers, entities about the September 23rd. It's going to be the huge cataclysmic on Earth event that we've all been expecting, because they've been programming us to expect it. Alright, so they talked about the Atlanteans being the 4th root race. We're in the 5th root race. And, we've gone through some very terrible times in our history, the Dark Ages. So we can say these evil entities controlling our planet are some very nasty creatures. Think about it. What they've done to humans. Killing off the American Indians in the USA, the natives in Central South America, Africa, all over the world. And these entities, who know a lot about technologies and history, have been behind all this stuff. They've been playing a game with the rest of us, so it seems. But maybe part of the human evolution of our spiritual entities, ourselves, part of it is are some of us smart enough to wake up, and are a lot of us just too dumb or would never wake up if this stuff was going on for the next 10,000 years? Maybe that's part of the situation. They want to see what kind of souls are developing and what kind of people who will stand up and be intelligent beings and call it for what it is. Just as in the case of race evolution, so in that of the shifting and reshifting of the continental masses, no hard and fast line can be drawn where a new order ends and another begins. Continuity in natural processes is never broken. Thus, the 4th root race, Atlanteans, were developed from the nucleus of the northern Lemurian 3rd race men, centered, roughly speaking, toward a point of land and which is now the mid-Atlantic Ocean. All right, continuing on about this information. Disasters on planet Earth. So their continent was formed by the coalescence of many islands and peninsulas which were upheavaled in the ordinary course of time and became ultimately the true home of the great race known as the Atlanteans. After this consummation was once attained, it follows as stated on the highest occult authority that Lemuria should no more be confounded with the Atlantis continent than Europe with America. Esoteric Buddhism, page 58. I don't know if I have that book, but Esoteric Buddhism might be an interesting book to read. The above, coming from quarters so discredited by orthodox science, will of course be regarded by it as a more or less happy fiction. Even the clever work of Donnelly, who wrote about the Atlantis, already mentioned, is put aside, notwithstanding that its statements are all confined within a frame of strictly scientific proofs. But we write for the future. Discoveries in this direction will vindicate the claims of the Asiatic philosophers who maintain that sciences, geology, ethnology, and history included, were pursued by the antediluvian nations who lived an untold number of ages ago. Future finds will justify the correctness of the present observations of such acute minds as H.A. Train and Raynon. The former shows that the civilizations of such archaic nations as the Egyptians, the Aryans of India, the Chaldeans, the Chinese, and the Assyrians are the result of preceding civilizations during myriads of centuries, and the latter points to the fact that Egypt at the beginning appears mature and old and entirely without mythical or heroic ages, as if the country had never known youth. Its civilization had no infancy, and its art no archaic period. The civilization of the old monarchy did not begin with infancy. It was already mature. To this, Professor R. Owen adds that Egypt is recorded to have been a civilized and governed community before the time of Menes and Winchell, the pre-Adamites, page 120, and that at the epoch of Menes, the Egyptians were already a civilized and numerous people. Manetho tells us that Elotus, the son of the first king of Menes, built the palace of Memphis, and he was a physician and left anatomic books. So he left books about the human body. This is quite natural if we have to believe the statements of Herodotus, whose records of Utopia, that the written history of Egyptian priests dated from about 12,000 years before this time. But what are 12,000 or even 120,000 years compared with the millions of years elapsed since the Lemurian period? The latter, however, has not been left without witnesses, its tremendous antiquity notwithstanding. The complete record of the growth, development, and social and even political life of the Lemurians has been preserved in the secret annuals. Unfortunately, few are those who can read them, and those who could still be unable to understand the language, unless acquainted with all the 7 keys of its symbolism. For the comprehension of the occult doctrine is based on that of the 7 sciences, which sciences find their expression in the 7 different applications of the secret records of the esoteric text. Thus we have to deal with every mode of thought on 7 entirely different planes of ideality. Every text relates to and has to be rendered from one of the following standpoints: the realistic plane of thought, the idealistic, and the purely divine or spiritual. Did you hear that? The purely divine or spiritual. The other planes too far transcend the average consciousness, especially of the materialistic mind, to admit of their being even symbolized in terms of ordinary phraseology. So I've gone through a lot of effort in my videos to dwell into this invisible reality. Even with Carlos Castienda in my video about the book of Separate Reality, where this guy from California went to Mexico, spent a lot of time with a priest, or I should call him a shaman or a witch doctor, and took peyote and learned how to see into this other world. There is no purely mythical element in any of the ancient religious texts, but the mode of thought in which they were originally written has to be found out and closely adhered to during the process of interpretation. So were a lot of these mythical creatures and the stories, were they true? What's that say about the Bible? Wouldn't all that be true? All right. For it is either symbolic, archaic mode of thought, emblematic, a later thought, very ancient mode of thought, parabolic, allegory, hieroglyphic, the hieroglyphics of the Egyptian symbols, and again logogrammatical, the most difficult method of all, as every letter, as in the Chinese language, represents a whole word. Thus, almost every proper name, whether in the Vedas, the Hindu book, the Book of the Dead, or the Bible, to a degree is composed of such logograms. No one who is not initiated into the mystery of the occult religions, logography, can presume to know what a name in any ancient fragment means before he has mastered the meaning of every letter that composes it. So why do the secret societies want to keep this from us? Where they have to even swear on a Bible under threat of death, having their throat cut? How is it to be expected that the merely profane thinker, so we non-initiated people, they call us profane, and of course the Zionist Jews, Talmudic Jews, the Jews that don't think kindly of the rest of us, call us goyim and goy, which means cattle. Some of the material I read includes the fact that they think we're biological beings without souls, or we have demonic souls, and that we were born to be their slaves. I've made videos on books about this stuff. Interestingly enough, I got another book in the mail today. Let's just look at it. It wasn't really a book, it was a magazine. I usually get little newsletters from Tex Mars, but this was too much today. So we're talking about Lucifer, Satan, the Zeta talk, the other channeled entities telling us there's becoming a pole shift, and we get movies like Hunger Games, Divergent, all kinds of satanic rituals all over the planet? Do we have some fallen angels, some evil entities working behind the scenes to destroy us? They're destroying the Middle East, the Islamic peoples. They're destroying, apparently, our society in the U.S. and Europe, the Christian peoples. What have they done to the people in the Philippines, the Oriental people, Vietnam, Korea, the people in South America, Brazil, Argentina, Peru, Central America, Panamanians, American Indians, native tribes, native people all over the world? Who would do all this evil, destroying other people, so these people can live in opulent mansions and obtain billions, trillions of dollars? Anyways, to get to the short story here, I got this in the mail and it was highly unusual. The Voice of Prophecy, and apparently Tex Mars is sending out this book. I made a video on this book here. And you got the Destroyer, the Feast of the Beast. What is coming? Look at that. The Feast of the Beast. What does this have to do with the fear about the... I just thought it was kind of interesting that he sent me this thing in the mail. He says in the forward letter in the front of this, the Jews and the lies. And remember, it's not all Jewish people. A lot of Jewish people wrote books warning the rest of us, like Rabbi Marvin Antleman, the leader of the Jewish Congress in the USA. I made videos on his books. I'll be looking at those again. And we got a lot of people that are turning traitor on the rest of us, even our pastors and churches gone wild. Obviously the senators, House of Representatives, the people in the government. So many books. Robot Alchemy. Think about the movies we're watching. So Tex Mars has a lot. I just noticed these pictures. Conspiracy of the Six-Pointed Star. Remember, Aleister Crowley, the Book of the Law, changed his name so that it would do a numerology, add up to 666. We went over my mysteries, monuments. So anyways, Bloodlines of the Illuminati, I've gone over that, showed it in my... You can buy these books at Tex Mars' website. Die, America, Die. So it seems that here's Khazaria, apparently where the whole nation embraced the Jewish religion 1,000 years ago. So if you go on Tex Mars' website and you order any one of his products, here's an order form. I don't get anything from this. He sent me this thing in the mail. Death Grip. Should we be concerned? What about this threat of the pole shift, September 23rd? Are there some evil forces at work bent on destroying the rest of us, enslaving us, the ones that don't get killed, depopulation? Which is why they use the sustainability, global warming, terror, threats, events, 9/11, World War I, World War II, passing legislation, building FEMA camps, Jade Helm 15, chemtrails in the sky, HARP system, biological warfare, Black Op projects, inventing more biological weapons, electromagnetic weapons, spying on us. We know all this is true. So let me get back to the book here. Thought I'd take a break. How is it to be expected that the merely profane thinker, that would be we citizens who are not initiated into these secret societies, the people who don't get gravy jobs or even paid to be mercenaries or hitman to assassinate people who wake up? Look what happened to President John Kennedy. And according to the confessions of an economic hitman, seems like people died, leaders of Costa Rica, leaders of Panama. Look at all the leaders of the Middle East countries, Gaddafi and Saddam Hussein, were slaughtered in very horrible fashions. But years earlier, they were favorites of Washington and the corporations, trained and given tons of money. Look at the situation in Venezuela. Apparently, the hugest oil reserve in the world, and the people have no money for groceries. What do you think they're going to do to the rest of us if they'll do this to all the people in the world? We Americans, and probably people in Europe, are in a unique position. We're still living with our constitutional rights and our minds intact. We can step up and do something. Or we can allow these sinister forces to destroy us, which apparently they intend to do. They want to bring about a sixth root race, and they have deemed that the fifth root race, most of us, are useless food eaters, so it seems. Even in China, they're now changing their industrial manufacturing facilities to use robots. And almost 1 billion people, or maybe more than 1 billion people. Why would they do that? Does somebody plan on depopulating the planet? Would World War III accomplish that? Would some fake pole ship accomplish that? In that symbolism, which can never get out of the old grooves of solar myth and sexual worship, shall penetrate into the arcana behind the veil. One who deals with the husk or shell of the dead letter and devotes himself to the kaleidoscope transformation of barren word symbols can never expect to get beyond the vulgaries of modern mythologies. So will we wake up? Thus, Vina Vasta, Exotheoritis, Duca Kalian, I'm saying these names horribly wrong, Noah, etc., all the head figures of the world deluges, so the worldwide floods, universal and partial, astronomical or geological, all furnish in their very names the records of the causes and effects which led to the event, if one can but read them fully. So there's much written about ancient history of a deluge of the planet, catastrophic event. All such deluges are based on events which took place in nature and stand as historical fact. Therefore, whether they were sidereal, geological, or even simply allegorical, of a moral event or on another and higher planes of being. So, as above, so below. So, whatever happens in the heavens happens here. Whatever happens here happens in the heavens. Is it all tied together? Just thinking. This, we believe, has now been sufficiently demonstrated during the long explanation necessitated by the allegorical stanzas. To speak of a race 9 yitis, or 27 feet high, in the work claiming a more scientific character than Jack the Killer Giant, it is somewhat unusual proceedings. Where are the proofs? So apparently these first or second root races were super types of beings, even giants. The writer will be asked, in history and tradition is the answer. And I've shown books on giants And the Smithsonian, if you were digging a swimming pool in your backyard and discovered a skeleton of a giant, and it got out in the local newspaper, the Smithsonian would be there instantly and confiscate everything and threaten people to not talk about it. So a lot of these named institutions like the Smithsonian and many others are fronts. A lot of people donate to these sustainability causes and other stuff to save the mountains, save the parks. They have no idea who controls these organizations. They've been deceiving and fooling us for a long time. There's plenty of evidence. I've been going over it, and I'll be going over it again and again and again. Traditions about a race of giants in days of old are universal. They exist in oral and written lore. India had her Divinus and Dietas. Cylon had her Reckonus. Different kinds of names for giants. Greece her Titans. Egyptian her Colossus heroes. Claudia Izudav. Nimrod. And the Jews their Emons of the land of Moab were the famous giants of Anakim. It's in the Bible, Numbers 13:33. Moses speaks of Og, the king who was 9 cubits high, 15 feet 4 inches, 4 wide, Deuteronomy 3-2, Goliath, 6 cubits and a span in height, 10 feet 7 inches. The only difference found between the revealed scripture and the evidence furnished to us by Herodotus, Diodorus, Circulius, Homer, Pliny, Plutarch, Pelagius, etc., is this. While the pagans mentioned only the skeletons of giants, dead untold ages before, relics of some of them had personally seen, the Bible interprets unblushingly, demand that geology and archaeology should believe that several countries were inhabited by such giants in the days of Moses. Giants before whom the Jews were as grasshoppers and who still existed in the days of Joshua and David. So you can find this stuff in the Bible. And many ancient texts, and some of their hieroglyphics drawings in Egypt and the world. They show these giants and humans as little creatures. Unfortunately, their own chronology is in the way. Either the latter or the giants have to be given up. So people are trying to keep the truth from humanity about reality. So we know the government's into remote viewing. They've been into psychic research for a couple hundred years. And people that are clairvoyant can see into the past, see into the future. This stuff is nothing new. It's been going on since mankind existed. They called them prophets, seers. So it's just curious to me, what do they know that they don't want us to know? And why are they preparing for some huge event on planet Earth? Of still standing witness to these submerged continents and the colossal men that inhabited them, there are still a few. Archaeology claims several such on this globe, though beyond wondering what these may be, it has never made any serious attempt to solve the mystery. Besides the Easter Island statues mentioned already, to what epoch do these colossal statues still erect and intact near Birmingham belong? So if you don't know about the Easter Island statues, look it up on your internet, but they got these gigantic stone statues. And apparently the stone was quarried from far away. And apparently there are instances of this all over the world, as is written in this material I've been reading. So I think a lot of us will accept the fact that there was a advanced race of beings prior to the Great Flood. And, were there 4 previous root races prior to this 5th root race? and 4 or 5 or maybe even many more cataclysmic events on Earth. It apparently has some cyclical period to it, maybe every 26,000 years. Some say it's every 3,600 years. And sometimes this passing of some planet, Nibiru, Nemesis, or even some position of Earth and the Sun in the galaxy as it moves forward, maybe above and below the elliptic plane. Crossing the elliptic plane would certainly change the polarity of something. That's my theory. And that could have a period of 3,600 years. And could there be several different periods involved situations? Or some other binary star system? And if all this was the case, that there is a regular occurrence on Earth, do you think the solution is what apparently the powers that be right now have done and are doing, and what they have planned for their survival and the demise of the rest of us, maybe by letting loose some plague? One can only wonder. So thank you for watching this video. I'll end it here. You can get the book. That was reading from page 336. Rick Miracle reporting.